Hello, friends. It's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and it is now June. I know we technically have a few more weeks until the official start of summer, but it already feels like summer here on the homestead. Not only have the temperatures been very warm, but we're also beginning to enjoy fresh produce coming in from the garden. And so, with that in mind, I thought it would be fun to, over the summer, bring you some videos that show our meals over the summer. In the winter, we do a lot of pantry meal videos that show how we use the food that we've preserved to feed our family of 11. But I very rarely show you the meals that we make using fresh ingredients that aren't canned or preserved in some way. And so in this video, I'm going to show you some egg salad. We're going to do some steak kebabs. We are going to make a garlic scape pesto focaccia bread, and we're also going to make a couple rhubarb desserts and things. So if any of that interests you, why don't you stick around? So I'm going to take you on a little tour, show you how the garden is looking right now. So every week, what I have to do is just kind of go out and assess the things that we have growing fresh. We really have a lot of lettuce. It's been unseasonably cool this year, and so the lettuce has not bolted yet, and it is just thriving, which is wonderful. We can eat a lot of salads, but my peppers and my tomato plants are not enjoying the cool temps that we had. Thankfully, it warmed up a little bit this week, so hopefully the plants aren't too stunted, and pretty soon they will start putting on some fruit. But for the most part, this time of year, we're just dealing with a lot of the perennial herbs and a lot of alliums like onions and garlic chives and things. But some of the stuff is starting to blossom, and pretty soon we'll have fruit, like on these beautiful blackberry plants that are thriving right now. So our garden isn't massive. It is enough, though, to meet our fresh eating needs and then preserve some for the winter months. So every week I start my meal planning by taking a little walk through the garden to see what we have available and what I need to use up in this week's meal. I also will walk around the property and look for what we can forage to add to meals, such as these elder flowers that will eventually become elderberries, but right now are just on the cusp of flowering. And I'll show you some meals with those next week. And once I have my list of what we have in abundance that I can use in my meal planning, I come up with some ideas for what I would like to make with those items. So, the first thing that I knew I wanted to tackle this week was doing something with my lemon balm. If you're not familiar with this plant, it is in the mint family, but it's a type of mint that has a really strong lemon flavor. It's so calming, it smells amazing, and it is really delicious in tea. We also make other things with lemon balm that I can show you later in the year, but if I don't get ahead of this tea and preserve it in some way or use it, it will just take over the garden. So this week I grabbed a couple bunches of this and washed all of the leaves, and we set it outside in a gallon of water here to make some sun tea. So it was really warm up and about 85 degrees a couple days this week. So that jar could just sit out in the sun for about 10 hours or so. And then in the last 15 minutes, once the water was nice and hot, I did add a little bit of green tea and I let that steep for just 15 minutes. If I let that steep all day, it would get rather bitter. But my goal here is to get an iced tea made with green tea leaves with a little hint of that herbal lemon balm flavor. So after about 15 minutes of the green tea steeping, we can bring it inside, strain out all of the leaves, and then I like to add just a little bit of honey. You can sweeten it to taste. And then I preserved some whole lemons, just froze them whole last year, so I cut those in half and went ahead and put those into the tea mixture, and we'll set that in the fridge, and we can enjoy this as a lovely iced tea treat. It's definitely was fun to drink some of this on the deck as I watched the little boys play in the sprinkler on one of these warm days this week. It's a delicious treat, really refreshing, has that slight lemon hint from the lemon balm and the lemon slices. So you definitely need to try that if you have an abundance of lemon balm that needs to be used up. Another herb that's definitely growing in abundance are our garlic chives. These are a perennial herb. They come back every year, and our little bunch of it seems to grow larger and larger. So I'm always trying to come up with uses for the garlic chives. So I have the little boys grabbing some of that. We grabbed a couple green onion tops, and I'm also going to pull off a little bit of romaine lettuce. This is how I tend to harvest it. I just leave a little bit of the base left, and you can see that after you harvest it, it will continue to grow more lettuce for you, and hopefully you can get 2 to maybe 3 cuttings of lettuce if the weather will cooperate and not get too warm. So we walked through the garden, we grabbed those greens that we need, and we are going to get busy making some egg salad sandwiches. We are going to start by just making some basic bread. I'm going to leave the full recipe in the video description, but we just got our yeast activated with a little bit of honey and warm water, and now I need to grind my wheat. I'm using hard red wheat berries. If you're new to grinding your own flours, you typically use hard red or hard white wheat for bread baking, and you'll typically use softer wheat, like soft white wheat berries, for your soft breads and pancakes and pastries and muffins and things. So our yeast is nice and bubbly and activated. We have our, I believe we did 5 cups of flour here. We're adding a little bit of avocado oil, and then we're also going to add a little bit of salt. And as I mentioned, the full recipe will be in the video description. And then I'm just going to use my Bosch mixer here to knead that dough. Now, whenever I am baking with freshly ground wheat, the amount of liquid that you need in your dough definitely does vary depending on things like the humidity that day, the amount of moisture in the air. So once I get the mixer going, I just add a little bit more water until it starts to form into a dough that I can see the mixer is actually kneading for me. And then after about 5 to 7 minutes in the mixer, I can pull that out and finish kneading it by hand to get it to the desired consistency that I like. Now we're going to let that dough rise for about an hour. Actually, it didn't even take a full hour because it was so warm in the kitchen on this day. And then once it had doubled in size, I can punch that down, get it in a greased cast iron pan to do a second rise, and then we're going to bake that in the oven. In the meantime, we're going to work on our egg salad. So we really have a lot of duck eggs this time of year. Our ducks are just being way more of an overachievers than the chickens are, and I need to use those up. I don't love the taste of duck eggs when they're just scrambled, but I don't mind them when they're hard boiled. So I threw a dozen eggs in my Dash egg cooker. It steams them. Another great thing about duck eggs is when you hard boil them, they are so much easier to peel than fresh chicken eggs. The shells come right off, and then we can get those eggs all chopped up. I do it nice and easily with this little tool. And now we can add some of our fresh greens that we had gathered from the garden along with a couple celery stalks. We want a little bit of crunch in that egg salad, and the celery will be great for that. I can't wait until we have fresh celery growing here this year, but it is not the season for that. So this is store-bought celery mixed with some of our homegrown greens. Now we need to make the sauce for our egg salad, and I'm going to make my homemade mayo. So this was 2 egg yolks, and to that I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of pickled banana pepper brine. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of yellow mustard. I added a little bit of dill and a teaspoon of salt. And then we've got that in our blender, and I'm going to slowly drizzle in some avocado oil, or sometimes I like to use regular olive oil. Don't use extra virgin olive oil. It has too strong of an olive flavor and just does not make good mayonnaise in my experience. But regular olive oil or avocado oil will give you a really great flavor. It's kind of not as pungent and strong as the extra virgin olive oil. So you can see we got our nice thick homemade mayonnaise with the dill mixed in. It's going to be wonderful when we have fresh dill from the garden, but for now we're still using up what we preserved from last year's garden that is dried. I also sprinkled in a little bit of paprika, some extra salt and pepper, and that is just my basic egg salad that I make. And this is a great way to use up the duck eggs that are growing on the homestead right now. So we've got a slice of our homemade bread. I put a little bit of our homegrown lettuce and some of that egg salad there. And this is just a wonderful lunch. Some great protein, some healthy homegrown greens. We are a big fan of that. Before we get to the next recipe for this week, I thought I'd share with you something fun that I did with the children. I have made my brownies for you many times, and I'll put the recipe in the description too in case you've missed some of those videos. But the point in sharing this isn't necessarily the brownie recipe. This week, I did a little homeschool science lesson with the children since it was a nice warm day and we were trying not to heat up the kitchen by using the stove inside the house. I decided to get out my sun oven and show the kids how we can make food using the sun's energy. So we have a lovely solar oven, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. We got our brownies all made together. You do have to get the sun oven out for several hours to get it to warm up and harness that sun's energy before you can put your brownies in there. But once you get them in there, it will bake just like a regular oven. And so this was just a really fun homeschool activity for the children, teaching some basic science principles, but then also providing us with a dessert on this evening without having to heat up the kitchen. So that was really fun. I highly recommend a sun oven. They are rather expensive if you buy them pre-made, but that you can make this really cheaply out of like an old grill and some plexiglass or something. That could be a fun homeschool project with the children too, to make one. But now let's move on to what we had for dinner with these brownies that we had for dessert. So one of my favorite things to do throughout the summer is to make kebabs, and we make them with varieties of meat, and it could be steak or chicken or seafood. We are using homegrown steaks on this day, and we have some onions cut up. And then what I like to do is chop up some potatoes, and then I'm just going to boil them for about 10 minutes. We don't want to fully cook them. We just want to get them partially cooked. They're going to finish cooking on the grill with the rest of the ingredients. Now, we don't have much growing in the garden right now that we can put on our kebabs, but as the gardening season goes on, I like to add things like zucchini and peppers and all sorts of other things. We'll just set out a bunch of veggies and a bunch of different meats, and the family can make their own kebabs. But for this meal on this day, we are just sticking to some storage onions that we have left from last year, some of our homegrown steak, and a little bit of potato. The steak was marinated in Worcestershire sauce, balsamic vinegar, garlic, salt, and pepper, and it was absolutely delicious. I love to just throw this on the grill, and it's one of those things, like it's really nothing fancy. It's just steak and potatoes, and we make that all the time. But for some reason, the novelty of the kebabs makes it really fun for the little children to eat, and so they tend to eat a lot better when their meat is on a stick for some reason. So like I said, you're going to see a lot of this in our meals throughout the summer, and I'll show you some of the other variations that we make. As a side dish for this, I decided to take some rhubarb that I had in the fridge, and we're going to chop it up and make something that Adam likes to call rhubarb sweetness. This was one of the treats that his grandma used to make him when he was little, and so he absolutely loves it. You just boil the rhubarb until it softens and add a little bit of sugar just to cut the sourness of the rhubarb, and you just cook it down almost like you would an applesauce. And that's kind of what it tastes like. Like if you made applesauce with a really sour green apple, except if it had a stringy texture because the rhubarb does kind of shred into little strings. And so when we were all done, we have our steak and potato kebabs, we have our rhubarb sweetness, and everyone was definitely happy about this meal on this day. After they ate this, we had those brownies that I had already shown you. So if you're wanting your kids to really enjoy their meal, try putting it on a stick and grilling it, and for some reason they will eat it much better that way than just the boring old regular way. Now we are going to make a recipe to use up garlic scapes. So I'm adding 2 cups of warm water, and we're going to do 2 teaspoons of yeast, and I added a big old hooping tablespoon of some honey. And we are going to get that all mixed together to get that yeast activated. We are going to make some focaccia bread, and it is going to be so yummy. So we're going to mix that all together, try to get some of that honey to dissolve and get the yeast to activate while we work on grinding our flour. Once again, we're using our grain mill. This time I'm using soft white wheat. Even though we're making a bread, I just decided to use this because I needed to run down into the pantry and grab another bag of hard red wheat, and just decided that we would use the soft white instead. We ended up adding approximately 5 cups of flour plus 1 teaspoon of salt, and we're going to get all of that mixed together. And we are not going to knead this dough with the mixer. I'm going to use my hands, and once we got that all incorporated together, we put a towel over it and let it rise for about an hour, taking a few times to stretch and fold the dough, just like I'm showing right here in the video. I just did this maybe 2 times during the course of that hour. And then after we were done, I oiled the bottom of my pan with a generous amount of olive oil, and then spread my dough out over the top of the olive oil, and let it rise again for a second time. And while it was rising, I ran out to the garden to grab our garlic scapes. These are the flower stalks of your garden plant, or your garlic plant. And I've done many videos on how we preserve garlic scapes. You can pickle them, you can make a pesto and freeze it, you can make garlic scape powder. It's a much milder flavor than your regular bulb of the garlic plant, but it is super delicious. And one of my favorite things to do is to make pesto. So this time to make my pesto, I just have the chopped garlic scapes and some avocado oil and salt in the blender. And I'm just going to mix that up until you literally can't, you don't have chunks of the garlic scapes anymore. And then we have this beautiful, vibrant green garlic scape pesto that I'm going to spread over the top of that dough. And much like just a regular focaccia, you want, a generous amount of olive oil on the top, because that's what's going to give you that really crispy crust. So we're going to spread that olive oil across as much as we can. And then you're going to see me use my fingers to make some dimples in the dough. And the purpose of those dimples is to make little pools of olive oil to really help give you that crispiness. So we're just going to do that. We are going to bake this in the oven on 425 degrees for about 20 minutes. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to warm up some home canned pizza sauce. I made this in a video for you guys a couple months ago out of some leftover frozen tomatoes that we had found in the freezer, and we're just going to warm this up. This is going to be the dipping sauce for our beautiful focaccia bread that turned out lovely. It smells so amazing. Love that garlic scape smell. I'm just going to get them cut into little bread stick shapes. I just want the pieces small enough to fit into our little dipping cups that I'm going to give the children. And this was a lovely lunch snack. We had also warmed up some leftover roast that we had had from the evening prior. And so the kids had their fill of breadsticks, and then they had some roast. The next thing I want to make is a rhubarb strawberry apple crisp / cobbler. I am totally winging it here with this. I have some jars of home canned strawberry syrup that I want to use up here. I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of arrowroot powder to the strawberry syrup and thoroughly mix it together. And I'm going to pour that over my chopped rhubarb and some strawberries that I had in the fridge that are in a greased cast iron pan. The purpose of that arrowroot powder is to thicken the strawberry sauce almost to make like a pie filling consistency. It will gel after it cooks later on. But now I need to roll out some of my oat groats into some rolled oats to add to our recipe. And whenever I'm using my oat roller, I always draw a crowd and somebody wants to do it for me. So while Levi is rolling out the rest of our oats here, I'm going to grind the wheat for the recipe. We are once again using a soft white wheat. And as I mentioned, I'm totally winging this. I'm not measuring it, just measuring with my heart. So I have enough flour and enough oats here. I'm just going to mix those together and add a little bit of baking powder. I had very little baking powder left up in this container in my kitchen, so I just decided to pour the rest of it in there. We're going to get that all mixed together, add a little bit of almond milk, and make almost like a dough or a crumble that I can put on top of our rhubarb and strawberry mixture. So once I get that all put on top, we have our oven preheating to 350 degrees, and I put that in there, and it baked for approximately 40 minutes. And then with this recipe, once you pull it out of the oven, you are going to want to let it rest for a while to let that filling actually solidify and turn into, like a pie filling texture. And when it's done, you can cut it into little pieces and slice it and serve it almost like a pie. We love the taste of rhubarb. There's something so delicious about that mix of rhubarb and strawberry, that sweet and sour, that really does remind you of this time of year. It's such a delicious treat, and the children definitely enjoyed this one. This was a midday snack after naps and school was done. We had this in between lunch and dinner just as a little pick-me-up in the middle of the day. So that's it for this week's video. My plan for the summer is to just kind of bring you along and show you the meals we're making with the things that we have growing fresh on the homestead. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing and liking, and we will be back next week showing you more fun from the homestead. Until then, I hope you guys have a lovely week, and we will see you back here next Sunday. Bye.